Hi everyone, and welcome back to season 3 of Commerce Meets Law, a podcast we talk about various commercial topics and how they interact with the legal profession. Today's conversation is a first for the podcast, as it is with a content creator who has created waves within the legal profession. I'm talking about none other than Libby Hendry, a social strategist and content creator who has single-handedly and organically gained Atwa solicitors 25,000 followers and 4.8 million likes on the firm's TikTok account. As a result, the firm has experienced a huge increase in demand for positions on the recruitment side, and their content has gone viral 15 times. Libby's work has also been shortlisted twice for the Best Early Talent Recruitment Campaign at the People in Law Awards. Since September 2024, she's been working with several brands and businesses to help them build their brand and generate greater customer acquisition through their social media channels. In this episode, we discuss where Libby's initial fascination with social media came from, how she landed up leading the social media team at Atwas Solicitors, the strategy she used to create a hugely successful TikTok account for the firm, and also her thoughts on using AI and whether it will replace content creators in the near future or in the long-term future. And finally, Libby's future goals as someone who has now been self-employed since September of last year. This episode is for lawyers, it's for marketing professionals, and anyone who wishes to have a strong social media presence, which has increasingly become a critical component of all of our professional lives in the modern world. Just a quick request before we get into the conversation. I'd really appreciate if you could kindly give the podcast a follow and a rating on Spotify. The higher the better, but of course, leave the rating up to you, as it really helps Commerce Meets Law reach more listeners. Without further ado, I really hope that you enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you right at the end. Hi, Libby, and welcome to Commerce Meets Law. Super excited to speak to you today and learn all about your journey. We haven't had a content creator in the legal sphere yet on the podcast, so I'm really excited to speak to you. But before that, we always have an icebreaker on the podcast, which is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's always a hard question. I would say probably I like to think I'm quite a people person, so I really like working with lots of different types of people, and I just really enjoy like directing people and like helping them make them feel comfortable in front of the camera. And yeah, so just probably that I just really like people and being around people. So yeah, probably that.
I love that. And I think, not just the legal profession, I think every profession thrives off of people who are able to interact with others and build those connections. I think that's such a key one. And before we talk a little bit about what you do today and how you ended up where you are, can you tell us a little bit about what were your main interests growing up, and were you always interested in the world of social media?
Yeah, for sure. So I really liked like dramatic stuff, so like acting and like being in plays and stuff like that when I was younger. So I don't know if that's translated. I feel like there's very much like the theatre kid to social media manager pipeline that I see a lot of like content creators used to do. And I really liked ballet and running, so very much like a theatrical person, I think, which probably translates to my work, or I like to hope it does. But yeah, I'd say they were my main sort of areas that I was really interested in. And that's sort of the content that I like to consume, is sort of like more fun, sort of like skits or like comedic stuff, really. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. And I guess where sort of I first came across you and sort of your journey was that post that you made about was solicitors and all the work you've done for them. So if we take a couple of steps back before that, when did you sort of decide that you wanted to enter the social media sphere, and particularly with a focus in the legal profession?
Yeah, so I would say it was probably around about lockdown actually. So I always really liked social media and really loved Instagram before TikTok was even a thing, which is crazy to think that there was ever a time when we didn't have TikTok, because it's so like fundamental to society nowadays and like the way people interact with each other. And Google is now like, I feel like being replaced by TikTok in a way. But I would say probably when I was locked down. So during lockdown, obviously TikTok became quite popular, and I would say that for me, I don't know, I just started like experimenting with creating content, and I really liked the app, and I really liked the way that you could edit stuff, and it allows for a lot of creativity, and it's not like overly polished content as well. So I really like that aspect of it, for sure. But yeah, I'd say just sort of like, yeah, lockdown and throughout lockdown, just learning how to edit, and I really fell in love with the process of it.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's been such a dramatic rise in TikTok over the past couple of years. And I think, like you said, you can find pretty much anything on there in terms of, whether it's cooking to learning about careers to, literally anything that your heart desires is pretty much on the app. And from a legal perspective, can you tell us a little bit about all the success that you've had with Atwell Solicitors TikTok and sort of the strategies that you use to really kind of grow their following and also grow the amount of likes that you got on every video? So, in terms of Atwell Solicitors and your journey with them from not just growing their TikTok following, but also getting so many likes on every video, can you tell us a little bit about where that journey sort of started and what attracted you to joining the firm?
Yeah, for sure. So, what attracted me to joining the firm was I really wanted to get into marketing, and it's the end of lockdown, and I saw a job being advertised at Wells Solicitors, and I wasn't really sure about working for a law firm because before my background had been in travel. And I remember saying to my mum, like, I'm not really sure, like, if I want to go for a law firm because it's not really something that I've always wanted to do or anything, and it's not particularly my personality. It's something that I ever think it would gel with before. But I remember my mum saying to me, like, oh no, I feel like, you know, they might be a really great place to work. And it just turned out that they were really great and they had a really great culture and personality within the firm. And I'm just really, really grateful for that as well from working there. But part of the process, basically, the reason we started on TikTok was the head of their careers came to me and basically said that they wanted to get more apprentices and like reach a younger audience and get the brand name out there. They said, did you have any sort of like ideas for how we could promote the firm in a different way and do that? And I suggested TikTok, and at the time it was a very different platform, and it was very much like still like a dancing app for kids and people weren't sure about it, so it was a little bit scary for them at first, and even for me as well, because we hadn't had, obviously nowadays loads of different brands are on TikTok, so you have more of an example of kind of ideas for brands to follow. But yeah, I think part of the success was being allowed to have like creative control over the process and over the ideas that we put on the app. I think having a lot of different approval processes is quite bad for like creative control, and also means that you can't jump on a trend as quickly as other people or other brands might be able to. I also think that it's really important to put your own spin on trends, so not just to copy everyone else, because it's great to do that and you may get likes and you might go viral, but it doesn't mean that you're going to stand out. And I think that's super important, is like injecting your personality into your content. And then also just like the people at the firm, I was very lucky that they were very up for being in the content and very up for being directed and stuff like that. We did face some resistance at the beginning with some people weren't too sure about TikTok and again thought it was like a very much a kids app, but in the end everyone's very much on board, and the managing partner especially was very gung-ho from the beginning to be in the videos, so that was very cool.
Yeah, and I think that really breaks the perception of what a lot of candidates or people might have about, law firms being very averse to change, but also in particular to, social media and adapting the way they market themselves and the way they sort of pitch themselves, as opposed to, maybe a fashion company or anything in another sector. From a numbers perspective, what the growth was like for the firm in terms of clients coming to the firm and also in terms of recruitment, because like you said, that was sort of a goal for the firm to begin with.
Yeah, sure. So I can't really say exact numbers, but it very much helped as time went on and we got more and more videos out there and more followers. We gained 25,000 followers and 4.8 million likes, which is insane from a sort of social media perspective. But then what that meant for the firm was that we were in lots of different news articles. I think NBC News contacted me after one particular video, the Man in Finance video, which got like, I think 19 million views and 1.5 million likes, which is just insane. And I never would have thought that would have happened at the time. So in terms of brand awareness, it was great for that. And Unilad as well, and lots of sort of student related platforms sort of came out and said, oh, we'd really like to like possibly feature you or collaborate with you. And that was really great from that perspective. In terms of like apprentices and stuff coming on for the firm, it really, really was such a great tool for that. So in all of our comments, we had loads of people being like, oh, I'd love to work here. What a great like human place to work. What a fun place to work. Everyone seems so nice and approachable. And it really gave us, I think, a competitive edge in terms of recruitment. Because obviously I think, especially for law firms, they often would go for like quite a corporate approach to recruitment and marketing. And I think it really sort of helped that we didn't go that route in terms of recruitment, especially. For inquiries as well, that really helped. I think lots of people think that just because you're on social media, like it's just not the place to be for a law firm, or it's not, serious enough. But actually, I think people really like to work with nice people and humans. And we had lots of people messaging us saying, they just really wanted a solicitor for conveyancing or this, that, or the other. We actually had one apprentice. He was at a networking event with the managing partner, and he came over to the managing partner and he literally bounded up to him and he was like, "Oh my God, are you Nick from TikTok?" And Nick was just like, "What the heck? Like, this is crazy." And he was like, "Oh, I love your TikTok account. I love all your content. I'd really love to come and work for you and create TikToks. And also, I'd really like to do an apprenticeship with you." And now he's been with the firm for like, I think 3 years it's been. So it's just insane the real life impact that it had. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's amazing. And I think that that culture element, particularly for candidates applying, is perhaps the hardest to be able to talk about or write about, because you can't have an idea of the culture just from a website or just from even one open day. You don't really know how it works. But seeing, like you say, whether that's TikTok videos or any sort of social media which involves the people at the firm, it really gives you an idea of, is this a place that I can picture myself? Is this a place where I feel like I can thrive? And I think that's, so nice that people can talk about that and can talk about that to managing partners who, you may shy away from thinking, oh God, they're so experienced, I can't possibly talk to them. But actually, it just makes them a bit more human. And I think that that's the power of social media. I guess when you were doing, those videos, and social media is known for people commenting not just positive, but sometimes negative comments as well. Did you have or face any sort of negativity? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely had a mix. So I think the more successful you are with something on social media, like the more you're going to get, unfortunately, some negativity or some like
Yeah.
increased sort of scrutiny. We did have
Mm.
some hate comments, but they were, as a majority, just sort of like silly things, like not really anything particularly to do with the law firm. I mean, some people would have said, oh, like I'm not sure about this for a law firm, like lawyers shouldn't be on TikTok. And loads of people actually came to our defense in the comments. We just, my approach was I just didn't want to get involved with any sort of negative comments, just to be professional. And also because there's no point, like people are always going to hate on success or, something new. And I think sometimes people are a bit afraid of something new that's being, you know, like a law firm on TikTok. You would never have expected that to have happened like 4 years ago. And I think people,
Yeah.
just are scared of something unknown. So but I would say that as a rule, we just kind of decided to ignore any hate comments. We did have some stuff, on the Man in Finance video or other videos that would, mean that we wouldn't get as nice comments, but overall it wasn't so bad.
I think that's such a key point that, the bigger you get or the more success you get, there are always more people who are trying to criticize that. And I think it's for the person and the people making the content to understand when it's constructive criticism as opposed to people just trying to bring you down or criticizing a point that wasn't really the approach that you were taking. From the perspective, I guess, of someone who maybe is in the position where they want to become a social media creator, whether that's for a company or, by themselves, what type of content do you consume on TikTok? And how do you, I guess, balance that ability to just watch videos for fun versus watching something and thinking, oh, that's something that maybe I can do, or let's take inspiration from that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good question. So I would say for me, it is quite hard when you work in social media to like, when is enough in the day to stop scrolling, because it's obviously you can always get ahead, especially on TikTok, of the trends. You can always create more content. You can always come up with more ideas, and it's very tempting to just scroll and scroll and scroll until you can't scroll anymore, to make sure that you have, you know, the biggest is just trying to stay ahead of the curve and the trends. So I'd say sometimes I definitely try and set limits for like time on like my screen time on social media, because it can be quite detrimental and cause burnout and
Mm.
stuff like that long term for some people. And also the type of content that I would consume, or it's quite a mix really, but I really like skits and anything really like humorous. Like I just find that so fun, and I really think it's just really like lots of ads nowadays that are like the best type of ads don't look like adverts. They look like a skit, for example, and they just put the product in there as like subtle product placement, or
Yeah.
they will do sort of like something where they can show the personality of someone at a firm through a trend. But yeah, mostly skits. I also do kind of like vlog content and showing behind the scenes of a company. So for example, like Sheer Lux, I don't know if you know them on social media.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
they
really
do
good.
some really, really good stuff. Yeah,
Their stuff's like, but oh, so good, like chef's kiss. But so all their like behind the scenes
yeah.
vlogs and everything like that they do. I just think the way that they approach social media is so fresh, and I think that's why they've stood out so well and had so much success on the platform. But yeah, as a vlog, skits, sort of fun stuff, and then I really try and inject the sense of fun and personality and uniqueness into every single client that I deal with.
I love that. And going back to sort of law firms in terms of, I guess, other businesses have perhaps used marketing more so, and now TikTok as sort of another extension of that. And with law firms, there's been marketing. It's mostly been sort of through the traditional channels like open days, perhaps online, or things like websites and stuff like that. How do you think that law firms should be on TikTok? In the way of how they do make their content? Is it similar to other businesses, or would you say that the tools used are slightly different there?
I would say that law firms, I think not every law firm should be on TikTok. It depends on sort of the nature of the business and the
Mm,
type of law that you deal with, for example. But I would say that is a place for
yeah,
everyone on TikTok, depending on obviously your sector and um, the nature of what you deal with and compliance and stuff like that. But I would say that it's really great to like showcase top talent on there, to attract talent, to humanize your brand and modernize your brand. I think the law profession, like the legal profession, has a great opportunity to modernize themselves on social media and like really showing the human side of lawyers, and not just for themselves and attracting talent, but to sort of like benefit the entire profession. Just I do think social media offers such a great opportunity to um, modernize the profession and like keep it really approachable and personable, because lawyers are such amazing people, and especially when I first started working at a law firm, I was like, oh god, I don't want to work for lawyers. Like they're all like wearing Harry Potter cloaks and wigs, and oh god, like oh, they're so scary, and they're so lovely, and it was very very much like an absolute gold mine for content, and just the people there were really lovely. So yeah, I think everyone has a story, and everyone has something interesting that they can tell on social media, and I think it's just about finding the right people that are going to represent your brand and be in the videos, really. Yeah.
absolutely. I think like that, like you said, that changing the image of the legal profession and law firms, I think, is so key, particularly to attract younger talent, to attract new talent, and even to attract people who are maybe working in other professions and are thinking, I fancy a pivot. What sort of career path can I take? And I think,
Mhm.
like you say, so many people have that image of, it being a stuffy office and everyone sat there for 20 hours a day. And, changing that kind of image of law firms and lawyers not being robots is such a key one. And social media can play a huge role in that. I guess from your perspective, I want to talk a little bit about your own journey. I kind of found it interesting that since September of last year, you'd sort of gone a bit more freelance, you become self-employed. Can you tell us a bit about what that transition looked like, and whether you had any fears about not having that regular 9 to 5 and becoming self-employed?
Yeah, I basically always wanted to do it, and I saw a lot of people on LinkedIn talking about their own journeys, becoming self-employed, and the benefits, and also people do now more as well, especially on social media, balance it with the cons as well, like not just the pros, and really talking about
Yeah.
like the benefits and the also concerns that you can have going freelance. I was very terrified, like when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have clients, but it's always terrifying. I think starting anything new is scary. But I'd say that I'd sort of grown a bit of a personal brand on LinkedIn. I'd had a lot of people come to me just asking for advice and stuff about social media and in TikTok, TikTok in particular. And yeah, like I just say that it's been a really good journey so far. Like I've liked the freedom that it's given me to decide, like take ownership of my own career, even more than in a 9 to 5, and also to be able to like work with lots of different clients in different industries, and the people I've met and like the sort
Mm.
of content that I've managed to create has been amazing, and it's just given me so many opportunities, and lots of doors have opened for me that I don't think would have opened for me in a traditional 9 to 5, just in terms of the content that I want to create and the direction I want to go in. I just think freelancing offers so many opportunities, and there's just so much opportunity out there. And it's just about having like an optimistic, positive mindset, and just thinking, it's just about the initiative that you take, and that can be applied to anyone in 9 to 5 or just any profession. I think it's all about initiative and like seeing opportunities and just trying to put everything in a positive light rather than thinking, oh God, like what's the worst that's going to happen? It's awful.
Definitely. I think that like you say, talking about the kind of realistic aspect of, yes, there are so many positives, but also these are some of the downsides, is so key, because then you make an informed decision. But overall, like we say, whether it's whether you're an employee or you have your own business or you're a content creator, proactivity and initiative is such a key one, to help you progress in your own career, regardless of what that looks like. In terms of kind of over the last couple of months, having been self-employed, can you tell us a little bit about some of the highlights or some businesses that you've worked with that you really enjoyed working with?
Yeah, it was really a mix. So some of them, so I first started working with an agency that was great. I've always admired them and their content for a while, like a really big one that I've just loved their content and the stuff they put out there. And that was more sort of on the ideation side of things rather than managing a whole account. And then nowadays, the clients I work with more regularly are sort of very much like doing what I did with Atwell's, but for their companies. So sort of strategizing and researching and going out there and looking at other content and seeing how that's created, and then thinking, how can I apply that to this niche, and just modernizing and making other companies that may be seen as more traditional or more corporate, be interesting to their audience and really making it stand out. But in a typical like day to day, I would say it very much varies. Some days I'm working from home and I'm doing strategy work and editing, and meetings with clients, and then other days I'm going out there and literally getting my iPhone out there and just wrangling people in front of the camera and being like, please we be in this video, like I did at Atwell's. And it's been really great. Like, I really love the variation that it gives me, and I really like my clients and everyone I work with, so it's been really great so far.
Alongside social media and TikTok, I guess the other big buzzword over the last couple of years has been AI, and how AI is either going to steal all our jobs or replace all of us or enhance, or there's lots of perspectives on the topic. How do you, if you do, use AI in your work, and how do you think it's shifted the way that content creators create in general?
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, like a year ago, or when I even first started doing the TikTok account for the law firm, I think, AI wasn't even a thing. And I think it is scary. Sometimes you do think, oh God, are we all going to be replaced by our AI and stuff like that? But I do think you should see it as more of like a friend than a foe. Like, I think for me, if I ever have any creative blocks, I'll literally go to ChatGPT and be like, what do you think about this idea? And then it will say, or it's all about the prompts you put in and making sure that you're using it in a good way to assist you with some areas of your work that you might not be able to, if you hit a creative block, or if you need some advice on what equipment to use or what would be best for this type of situation that you're going into, it's really great. It's kind of like a little like virtual assistant almost, I think, that people can use. And for me, I just sort of use it for like tips or for advice on how I can improve my content rather than going to it for everything, because I feel like it really shines through when people use ChatGPT. Like, I think it's quite obvious, to write their content or to come up with ideas. But I do think it's great to use it as a tool, and it's definitely made a difference in my career for sure.
Absolutely. I think, like you say, as long as we use it as an assistant or to aid us to help our work, kind of make it better rather than substituting it for our own creativity, I think that's where it can be really, really helpful. And whether, regardless of whether you're in content creation or in law or any other profession in that regard. And before we move into our rapid fire, since we've spoken so much about your journey, and there's a lot of people now, especially graduates or even younger, interested in content creation, whether it's for their own or for companies, what would be your top tips for people who wish to pursue a similar path to you and perhaps to become a freelancer at some point in their career?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, I know it sounds really cringe, but honestly, LinkedIn has saved my life. Like, I would not be freelance without LinkedIn, and I wouldn't be on this podcast without LinkedIn. Like, I think especially for people that want to get into content creation, it's great to get into it. And then once you're into it, I think using LinkedIn and your experience to like talk about your story, talk about your personal story, talk about your skills, talk about case studies that you've really liked seeing, or even just for anything, like just making sure that you're getting yourself out there on LinkedIn. Is really important. I think people are scared of it. People think it's cringe, and every time I post, I feel a little bit cringe. I think everyone does, but I think it's so important, because if you're not going to promote yourself, who will know about your work? Like, so many social media managers are like completely unknown behind the camera, and I think it's really important to talk about your successes and talk about your work to attract more and create more for yourself. Also, I'd say to people that haven't got into social media yet but they want to, I'd say honestly just pick up a camera and record, and make sure that you're creating your own experience. So if you don't have experience with a type of brand, making sure that you um, have a portfolio of mock-up sort of content that you do. So like taking the initiative again, and like if you want to work for a restaurant, or get into the food industry or something like that, going to restaurants, or you know anything like that, and making sure that you're putting together videos that you could potentially create for a restaurant brand. Or if you want to work, I don't know, doing bridal content, making sure that you contact bridal studios and offer them like, can I help you with some free work, or can I possibly shadow you for a day? Just all about taking initiative, and seeing opportunity in situations that you might not have done before.
I absolutely love that. I think that's one of the best things about TikTok as well, and I think why it differs from other platforms in that regard, because you can be really real on it, and all you need is literally a phone which has a camera in it, and
Yeah.
that's all. You don't need a fancy, mic, you don't need a fancy like camera, anything like that. And I think that's what it means, that it allows you to be authentic, allows you to be real, and like you say, then take that initiative and be proactive as well. So I think that, there's a lot of talk about all the disadvantages of social media, but I think the benefits really, really do outweigh the costs if you use it in the right way. And we always like to end the podcast with a quick rapid fire. So your first question is, what is the best and worst advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, I would say, like worst advice. Oh, it's so hard. Maybe like making sure that you follow a set path, or like thinking that just because you're in one career or you're doing one particular thing, that you can't stray from it, or just decide to change
Yeah.
your mind and pivot. I think that's so important, and I've seen so many people go along certain paths and then be like, what am I doing? Like, I thought this is what I wanted and I don't want it, and then having a way better time doing something else that they wouldn't have thought of before. I think that's really important, to constantly be checking in with yourself and thinking, is this what I want? And do I actually want to do a different sort of route? Because I think 20-year-old Libby would have been like, what the heck is going on? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's very hard to know
Yeah.
what you want when you're just fresh out of school, and then trying to carrying it on to being like, I'm 28 now, and I think younger me would have been like, oh, this is amazing, but I would never have thought that I'd be doing this sort of, TikTok didn't even exist when I was 20. So just being completely
Yeah.
ready to pivot and change, and just very much adapt to certain situations. I think if you're too rigid in things, sometimes it's quite hard to um just to be successful and have advantage with stuff. I'd also say, best advice, probably, if you want more, you can create more. I think my dad is freelance; he's a photographer, and he's very successful, and he's done very well for himself. And he always says to me, like, you just have to be optimistic, and you have to just create your own opportunities. If you see something, you should go after it, and it doesn't make just being like very positive about stuff. And just seeing the good in everything, and making sure that you are going after what you want, and just completely just be you and be yourself, and don't apologize for who you are, because what makes you you is going to shine through in your videos, or is going to shine through on your profile, or just you as a person, and that might mean that make all the difference if you're trying to go for a job, for example, and you're being fully yourself and presenting as yourself and not someone that you think you should be. That might completely make all the difference and get you the job, or get the opportunity that you want.
For sure. I see where you get the creative gene from. I love that. And then
Oh.
I think that, like you say, when you go into interviews or anything like that, they always say, "Oh, authenticity is so key." But sometimes we're too scared to kind of put ourselves forward. And social media is a great tool to kind of just test that out, because you can put videos out there, see what people react to, and most times you can be like, oh, actually people are resonating with this content. Maybe I can go and be myself out there. And yeah, it really gives you that confidence for sure. The second question is, what does an ideal weekend in your life look like?
I'd say probably spent with my family and friends, going outside, getting some exercise in, maybe going to the cinema. I sound like such an old woman, but I really like the wholesome life. Like nowadays, like I'm very much done with like going
I
out
love
and stuff
that.
like that. Like I like a good night out now and then, but probably going to the cinema, maybe going for a run, seeing my friends, and like cooking something nice and like wholesome, like a nice roast or something like that. I like a good bake as well, like maybe making some cinnamon rolls or something like that. But yeah, very much grandma core for me. Yeah.
Sounds delicious. That's where I'm at already as well. It's like the final year of uni, and I'm ready to enter grammar mode. And the final
Yeah.
question is, for since it's the start of the new year, what are the top three travel destinations on your bucket list?
Ooh, I would say so. Last year, I went to Morocco for a few days to learn to surf, and it was the best thing I've ever done. I never thought that I would ever learn to surf because I'm very scared of sharks. I'm very scared of like the ocean, but it was amazing, and I really like overcame my fear and stuff of that. So would say any surfing destination, so like Bali or Sri Lanka. Love to go to Australia, but there are sharks there, so not sure about that. Australia, Bali, Sri Lanka, I'd say definitely are the top three.
I love that. Yeah, sounds amazing, and I hope that if not this year, but you hope to, I hope that you end up in the three places over the next couple of years for sure. And
Yeah.
on that note, Libby, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was the first time that we spoke to someone who is connected in the legal profession, but from the content creation perspective, and it's really interesting for me as well as someone who also wants to create content and try and spread knowledge in a slightly more hopefully fun way and talking to people who have had really, really interesting journeys into the profession. So I really, really appreciate you taking your time and coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and it's been such a great conversation.
And on that note, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and a massive shout out to Libby for coming on Commerce Meets Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let me know by emailing commercemeetslaw@gmail.com or with a DM on Instagram at Commerce Meets Law. And you can also reach out to us now on our website with the same name, commercemeetslaw.com, as a one-stop shop for all of our social media channels. Finally, for access to my content and in keeping with the theme of this episode, do check out the Commerce Meets Law YouTube channel and our TikTok. For now, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.